Hello, everyone. This is Sabrina Paganoni. I'm calling from the HEALEY Center, HEALEY and AMG Center for ALS and Mass General. Welcome so much. Welcome to all of you. Really excited to have you here for our weekly update as always. And I'm just giving people a few seconds to join from the waiting room. I see that the numbers of participants is still increasing. So I'll just give everyone a few more seconds to join. And so for tonight, I'm here with Dr. Mary Sukovic, the PI of the HEALEY ALS platform trial. I'm here with Catherine Small, our patient navigator, who is very familiar to all of you. And I'm really excited tonight to be joined by Michael Ochkin from Clean Nanomedicine, as well as my colleague, Dr. Barry, also from the HEALEY Center at ALS. As always, we love to give you an update on our enrollment and general platform trial activities, but for tonight, we're going to focus specifically on regimen C, that's been testing CNM-Au8, which is an investigational product manufactured by Clean Nanomedicine. And so that's why we have Michael Ochkin tonight here from Clean Nanomedicine, and James also joins as a co-lead investigator of regimen C of the platform trial. So with that, we can go to the next slide. And just for kind of as a summary, as you know, we've been testing many drugs as part of the platform trial. In fact, the goal of the platform trial is to test as many drugs as possible in an efficient and rapid way so that we can make progress faster. We started in 2020. We've been progressively, we've been adding regimens. Right now, we're still enrolling for regimen E. We're completing enrollment soon for that. That's testing a drug manufactured by Silos Therapeutics, and we are working on adding regimens F and G to test drugs manufactured by Calico and Denali respectively, and we expect those to be launched soon, right after we wrap up enrollment for regimen E. And next slide. So again, we are every week we give you updates about regimen E, because I know we're all waiting to complete enrollment for the regimen, and then regimen E, and then move on to starting enrollment for regimens F and G. And so every week we make some progress. So we are at 92.5% enrolled. We have a number of people in screening. We can talk more about it later, but essentially right now, again, we are really close to enrollment goals. So when we complete enrollment, that doesn't mean that the regimen has ended. In fact, what that means is that we have enrolled, or we have started testing with, with the target number of participants, and then we're going to follow them over a certain time periods. And so if we can go to the next slide, just, to remind everyone, each regimen includes a placebo-controlled period, which is a 24-week or 6-month period where we compare people who are randomized to active versus placebo in a 3-to-1 ratio in favor of active, meaning that there's many more people on active than people on placebo. And then after each participant completes their own 6-month randomized period, they're eligible for open label extension, active treatment extension. So what that means is that people who complete the 6-month randomized period are eligible to receive active treatment long term. And then we're going to basically compare people who started early compared to people who started with a 6-month delay. That was the original placebo group. So we've been using the same schema for every regimen, and that includes regimen E, that's again completing enrollment now, as well as the previous regimens, the ones that were already fully enrolled, including regimen C. And then as results are available, we always communicate them essentially in real time on this forum, as well by way of communications, press releases, etc. Next slide. So going back to regimen C, the one that we're talking about tonight, so we announced top-line results in October 2022. And as you may remember, and actually the webinars are recorded. If you want to go and dive deeper into the details, you can watch the recording. While the primary endpoint was not met, exploratory analysis of the secondary survival endpoint identified a survival signal for the 30 milligram dose. Now, based on that, if you can click next, Clean Nanomedicine, and then Michael can tell us more about this. Clean is working to prepare a separate phase 3 trial for the drug that was tested in regimen C. Click one more time. So what's new now is that we are transitioning the participants who are still enrolled in the open label extension, that long-term active extension phase of regimen C, we're going to be transitioning them to a different protocol known as Expanded Access Protocol, or EAP. So that's managed by Clean Nanomedicine. So essentially, we are transitioning participants from that program, because now the participation of Clean Nanomedicine in the platform trial is essentially concluding. But now for people who have been on drug, again, there are other options. So just wanted to maybe dive a little bit deeper into that. Next slide. We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago when Michael and James were on this call. So again, just to reiterate, the key points from that discussion is that people who are currently participating in the open label extension of regimen C will be prioritized for this clean EAP so that they can continue to stay on drug. That will be available either at their site or perhaps another platform trial site. And in fact, the good news is that there will be more access for even more people so the EAP will include not only the participants in regimen C OLE, which will be prioritized, but also additional participants who have not been part of the trial so far. And details will be posted publicly. And with that, I would like to go to the next slide and again turn it over to our guest speakers, James and Michael, who will take your questions.
We do have a couple questions. I don't know, Michael, if you want to, did you want to say anything before I start asking the questions?
No, I'm happy to have you lead straight into questions.
Okay. James, anything from you before questions?
No, I mean, I guess I would just say that it's been a wonderful collaboration with Clean on regimen C, and we're excited for their expanded access program, and happy to be here to be able to answer questions that may linger for people, and glad to be back again.
Okay, thank you. There's a question that was really important. Is there a penalty for not returning the CNA and AU8 medicine bottles? I'd like to continue taking it until the site's EAP is set up. I was told by my site it could take several months, and I have another box left over.
I guess let me start with that. From a regulatory perspective, when we do a trial, we have to account for all of the investigational product at the end of that, and so it really is important that we get back the leftover investigational product. It puts the whole sort of trial at risk if we can't do drug accountability. And by drug accountability, I mean saying, this much was given out, this much came back, that matches up with the days that that we followed people. And so it really is important for the trial that we get that investigational product back that's unused. And I guess the one thing I would say is that sites are working very quickly to get these contracts set up and get the EAP open, and they've really committed to that and are doing that. And we're working to try to make this as smooth a transition as we can from our end. I know, Michael, you can talk in a minute about what you're doing with sites to make that work well on opening the EAP side. But it helps them to be able to wrap up the OLE trial, and part of that is accounting for the IP. So there is I don't know if there's a personal penalty, but there's a penalty to the trial and to all of those timelines for not getting it back.
Right, and I'd like to echo James. Just the importance of clinical trial conduct is to return the medication as part of that accountability. And with that said, another important aspect is we typically think of about 5 half-lives of a drug being active in the body, or at least having some level of drug effect. Now, CNMA-AU8 has a relatively long half-life, just under a month. And so 5 half-lives would be 5 months where CNMA-AU8 is still active at some level in your body. So there may be a gap in therapy in the worst case scenario, but you'll still have some drug in your body if you're presently taking CNMA-AU8. And we've already signed our first several contracts. So things are progressing rapidly with both the sites and with all of Clean's activities to support the implementation of the EAP. And we're confident for those early active sites that we'll be getting drug to them imminently.
Now, I have that Michael and Clean are they're prioritizing the OLE sites so that they're really first. So if I was just going to say that it shouldn't take months. So maybe definitely you can, with Catherine, you can talk to us so we can make sure your site gets with Michael and faster. So there's a question, what was the primary endpoint for regimen C?
Yeah, so the primary endpoint was to look at put simply, to look at the change in the ALS-FRSR over time, and then a little more complex than that is we have to account for missing data and whether it's in the form of missing data because people dropped out or because of survival, and so there's sort of this more complex model that goes into that, but the change in the ALS-FRSR is the primary endpoint.
There's another question kind of related to the switch over from OLE to EAP. So the question is, why not keep participants in the open label extension until the EAP is up and running, so there's no lapse? I don't know, Michael, if you want to answer that one.
Sure. I think operationally and logistically, it was more straightforward to end the ongoing OLE and then open up the EAP in parallel. And in most instances, it will be seamless, I think, for most participants that opt to go into the EAP. And then we're working to minimize any kind of delay in a treatment gap.
And can you share where the sites with contracts are signed, or I don't know if you can share that?
At this point, it's still confidential until we have all the final details wrapped up. But as we have those, we'll begin posting those on ClinicalTrialgov under the EAP.
Are the trial results available from regimen C? I don't know, James, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, so the top line results have come in from regimen C, and just to kind of recap those, Sabrina, I think, talked about them very briefly, but just to recap them, the primary endpoint, the ALS-FRSR, did not show a difference. There was in one of the analyses of survival, which looked at the 30 milligram dose, which is a dose that had been tested previously, there was a signal that there were fewer deaths in that group relative to placebo. The numbers were small, and there is ongoing capture of survival going forward. And Michael, I don't know if you want to contextualize that in the clinical development program or how you thought about kind of next steps for the program.
Right. No, I think you highlighted some important caveats that it was only a 6-month data cut, and there were a small number of events. Nonetheless, with those limitations, these are entirely consistent with a long-term follow-up we've seen from our phase 2 study in Australia with CNM-Au8 at that same 30 milligram dose. So now we have 2 independent data sets that both suggest the possibility of a survival benefit, and we'll be taking that endpoint forward into the larger phase 3 program to see if we can have a definitive improvement in survival for the long-term treatment of people living with ALS.
So there's back to kind of the timeline, there's another comment that their site, Penn State, Hershey, said it would be months because the EAP is really separate from the platform trial, new consents and new contracts. And so I don't know if you want to maybe explain that, or ways that sites like Penn State could get it, that
Right.
not several months, that's much shorter.
Yeah, based on my current understanding, and keep in mind that we have some 30 sites we're working with right now, but I believe Penn State is progressing quite well, and that we're close to, I think we're close to contract signature. So in that case, transitions would be imminent. Don't quote me on that because I don't have the full team here that's handling all of the operational pieces, but my recollection is Penn State's quite advanced.
Then we have a question, I think, from one of our site investigators who's asked, when are the IRB documents revised to ICF? When are they going to be available from Clean? So what's kind of the sequence from the
Certainly.
contract? Yeah.
The initial ICF was approved by the central IRB, which is Advara. We have some minor corrections to make based on updated safety data tables that came from the HEALEY team. We'll be making those corrections and then resubmitting this week. And then we hope to have, we're not changing any of the language, we're changing safety data tables. And we hope to get that, the final ICF this week, in which case everything can be submitted to as part of the institutional review process.
Great, so that's soon, that's fast. So there's a thank you for this EAP, and they're so important to patients and families. Is there a clinical trial NCT number for this EAP yet on ClinicalTrialgov?
Yes, we do have this EAP and the original EAP in collaboration with MGH, both posted on ClinicalTrialgov. And as each site contract is completed, we'll be adding those sites to the EAP02 for CNM-Au8, as well as the appropriate contact individual at each institution.
There's a question about how many participants from Regiment C went into the open label. I know it was the majority, but I don't have the exact number on me. I don't know if James or Michael has that number.
I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe 161 individuals were randomized to Regiment C. I'd have to go back and look at the tables to understand the total number that completed and were available. And then of that number, if memory serves, 139 continued into the OLE.
Hi, wow, that's good memory.
Maybe.
So there's a question, I love this, the way that it's written. Is it okay to join the EAP while taking the 3 R's? Riluzole, Radicava, Relyvrio. Yes,
absolutely. All approved therapies are allowed, and subject to allowances of other programs, other investigational products are also allowed in the clean EAP, provided there's permission from the originating regulatory documents filed with FDA for that other drug. Since CNM-Au8 doesn't have any drug-drug interactions based on its nanocrystalline structure and lack of passage to the liver, we feel that it's relatively safe to use in combination with other products.
Is there a cost to people who go into the EAP, like the drug testing, the labs, etc.?
No, there's no cost. We're providing the drug on behalf of Clean directly to your institution to then distribute to you. There is an expectation that at least every 6 months, you have usual standard of care labs completed.
And those would go to insurance. Is kind of
correct.
What you're saying.
Right. Yeah. This would be any type of long-term care. So basic CBC and Kim.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat, I think, just some clarity about what's listed in ClinicalTrial.gov, because there's one EAP that says no longer available, but it says EAP02. I don't know how they're numbered.
Let me click on that link and make sure it is the correct one. And the link that's been shared is exactly CNM-Au8 EAP02, and that is the one that is expanding now. And the first EAP, EAP01, was done in partnership with MGH and still is continuing, but is no longer open for new participants on average.
And Michael, EAP02 had an initial group of 3 sites, but that's the one that you are expanding so that many more sites will be available. So is it correct to state that link on ClinicalTrialgov will be updated with many more sites?
Yes, that's
as
correct.
They become available. Okay, thank
yes.
you.
Good questions. All right, how long is the EAP and how many in-person visits are required?
So we don't require any in-person visits. Those are subject between you and your clinician for follow-up. Our intent is to continue running the EAP as long as we can until eventual commercialization of CNM-Au8. But let me knock on wood to make sure that we can continue to maintain those levels. And the overall goal is to make sure that we expand the EAP to provide access to up to 200 individuals living with ALS.
How many? Well, you just answered how many people will be accepted into it. And I guess the question is it covered by Act for ALS funds, and what's the estimated cost per person?
At this point, we're not covered by Act for ALS funds. This is being done on behalf of the company. And we're not sharing our cost per participant at this time.
Okay. Sabrina, I don't know if you want to answer this one. Going forward, will the other HEALEY platform trial regimens, such as D, likely to follow this open label to EAP transition?
That's a great question. Actually, I don't know that we have made any final decisions. I think it will depend really on the results and other factors that may impact sort of availability of the drug and funding and etc. I would say that, at some point, open label the open label study, at some point, it's good to have a clear data cut so that we can analyze all the data. But then, at that point, we also want to keep people who want to stay on drug. We do want to have mechanisms for them to stay on drug while, the original trial is finished. So I think, it's actually good. It's good that we're thinking about all these different models that were not available in ALS until quite recently, actually, until just a few years ago. And so I think that now we're trying to think about the best fit depending on the specific situation.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like it. I guess we'll see how it goes with C. But it's we did get a lot of data on up to 52 weeks on most people in the OLE, and obviously now that we're closing it, we'll lock it, and that data will be analyzed. It's a nice timeline to do that. So
if I recall correctly, the very first participant enrolled in July of 2020, and then we continued, obviously the ongoing OLE through current. And so, I think nearly all participants had at least 52 weeks of OLE and the initial 24-week study period as well.
I know this isn't the subject of this call, but I do want to say that we're really grateful for all the partners for not only being part of the platform trial, but providing OLE. It's actually, it can sometimes cost more the OLE part than the double blind because it's longer and it's as rigorous. And we do hear from smaller companies, pharma, that it's hard for them to cover it. So being able to be creative like this and to EAP and maybe applying to ACT for ALS for some of that, it might be a way to make sure that we can do what's right, but do it also in a way that's affordable. So a question, is Clean's EAP collecting research data on EAP participants similar to how ACT for ALS EAPs will be doing?
Yes, this is, it's not a requirement to collect data from each doctor and each site. So it's done on a voluntary basis. We hope participants and their clinicians will actually record data because that enriches the overall experience. As far as research questions that we can answer in the future. However, it's not a requirement that every site be entered into the data collection.
Will Clean be setting up a separate database for this EAP or use the same one as was used in the previous EAP, the multi-site, the 3-site one?
Certainly. Yep, we'll be transitioning to a new EDC and then taking all of the legacy data for safety reporting and integrating the two.
And then there's again a thank you for offering the EAP. I did not expect trial and OLE participants to be eligible. So thank you.
We're happy to do as much as we can, and we thank you to the entire ALS community and our wonderful partners at MGH and the entire team there for everything you've done to support the platform trial. It's an amazing Herculean effort, and together I really hope we can advance the state of and standard of care for ALS.
Way at the beginning, we had 2 Regimen E questions, which I just waited for now because I know we wanted to get to all the Clean Regimen C questions. So Sabrina, I don't know if you want to take these. So one is, does PCM, which is the home nursing infusion, have to do the infusions even if a participant has a port?
Yes, we do have PCM visit the patients at home, the participants at home, and so they can help with the port. And our nurses who go and do the infusions, or I should say the PCM nurses who go and do the infusions also collect vital signs and report adverse events. So in a way, they are an extension of the study team, again, for reporting vitals and other information to make sure that we monitor the safety of the participants.
And then the question is, in Regimen E open label part of it, are diagnostics being still collected and by whom? I think probably that means I like outcome measures and labs and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to what the point you were making earlier. The open label extension is just as rigorous and very important, just as rigorous as the placebo controlled portion of the trial. And so we have the same rigor and a set of outcome measures, biomarkers, etc. Over time, they become a little bit less frequent, and that's because we recognize that it's a lot of time and effort from the participants as well. But yes, it's the same type of outcomes.
Excellent, thank you. Were there certain things that made this EAP possible for Clean, or what inspired this EAP for Clean? And we appreciate this. Michael, that's for you.
Yeah, I think overall, as a company, we made a commitment to supporting ALS. And while we decided we couldn't continue with the OLE conduct, we did want to ensure that CNM-Au8 was made available both to everyone in the OLE and to expand that offering to other eligible participants.
When a cap is set on the number of people who get into expanded access, what's the selection process and who decides who gets in and who does not? I don't know if James, you want to try to tackle that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so for most of our EAPs and studies, there's it's primarily a sort of, who's there to enroll. So sort of a first come, first served. That's sort of the paradigm. Now, many times while a study is enrolling, we have more spots than we have people in front of us until the very end, and then at the last few people enrolling, we try to take everybody who gets there first. Sometimes we have a study or a trial or an EAP where there are many more people. This is usually kind of at the site level. There are many more people who would like to enroll than there are spots. And we've done things like work with medical ethicists to try to figure out what's the ideal solution for this. And it's not always the same. Sometimes we randomize, sometimes we look for, we look at the list and sort of parse based on who qualifies and kind of go to the people who look like they would qualify first. So those are some of the ways that we've handled this in the past.
Thank you. Is there a way for other sponsors to learn from Clean standing up this EAP, like a publication or presentation? Or that's a good idea. How can other companies learn from your experience here?
In the long run, our plan is to publish our experience with the EAP, and so we're happy to help share that information moving forward.
There's a question about the Biogen study, and I'm not sure. I think I know the answer, but I'm not positive. So I'll see if other people do, which is the BIP 105 study is not a HEALEY trial. We're one of the sites, but it's a Biogen-led gene therapy trial. And the question is the ratio for drug to placebo 2-to-1 or 3-to-1? I believe it's 2-to-1, but I'd have to double check.
I had 2-to-1 in my head as well, but
that's a gene therapy to lower ataxin 2. It's led by Biogen. Okay, we have probably last question. Does randomization for any new trial begin only after enrollment is complete? I know, Sabrina, if you want to answer that one.
I think is this question about sort of, I guess F and G that are coming up. Yes. So in this particular situation, we want to complete enrollment in regimen E before we launch regimens F and G. And the reason is that for the new regimens now, we will be including stratification, which is one technical term to essentially balance for the use of the new drug, Relivrio. That was not available when we started the previous trials, and now we just have to adjust our systems and our drug delivery systems to account for that. Because of that specific technical reason, we need to wait. Previously, no. So, for example, when we added D or when we added E, they were sort of added on a rolling basis, so that there was no need to wait. But again, because of this specific situation of a new drug being approved, we need to sort of reboot the system.
Well, I want to thank James and Michael for joining us and answering these questions and for making this Clean EAP available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Merit, Sabrina, Catherine, and team, and James as always.
Thank you. Yeah, good to see you, Michael. Take care. Bye-bye.